inner light. Today, we explore what it means to live with true elegance. Not the kind you wear, but the kind you embody. Joining me is Jake Ferrin, founder of Breathe Energy, a pioneer in luxury breathwork, guiding high performers to release, realign, and reconnect with purpose. Get ready for a raw and elevated conversation about the spiritual path to wholeness. Welcome to the show, Jake. It's an honor to have you.
It's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you for allowing me to join you today.
Absolutely. So, Jake, you use the phrase elegance through spirituality in a world addicted to hustle. What does elegance actually look like for someone on this path?
Elegance is composed of three parts. And often when people think of elegance, they focus on the last step of it, which is beauty. But there are two steps before that. And the first step is that your life needs to be effective. And that to be effective, we need to be healed, we need to be self-aware, we need to be using our gifts to their fullest. And then once we learn how to use our gifts to our fullest, then we learn to give those gifts to the world so that the world can be abundant and we can as well. So that is kind of the short answer of what effective is, that you need to be effective throughout all aspects of your life. And self-awareness and spirituality can help you achieve that you're able to see the world as the world really is so that you can move in harmony with it. And then the next part of it is usually when we become effective, we add extra steps, we add extra processes, we create complications while we're trying to figure out how it works because we're going down a lot of different paths. And that once we become effective, then we can simplify. We can say, okay, this is an easier path to get from here to there, and we can create a simpler version of what has been effective. And then the final step and that's utilitarian. Most people stop at just utilitarian level. Hey, I've got something that works and it's easy. And then if you take it one step further and say, how do I make this beautiful? I've got something that's effective. I've simplified it to its simplest form so that it works very easily. It works very reliably. And then you take that one step further, and now you can create something that's beautiful, that's enjoyable, that's attractive to you and to other people. And that is elegance.
That's amazing. And why do you think most people resist slowing down, even though they crave peace?
I think the reason that most people slow down or resist slowing down is that they're afraid of doing what's important. That if we focused on something that was truly life changing and we failed, that would be incredibly difficult. That would be incredibly painful to deal with. There's a lot of uncertainty there when you're really going for it. I've had the good fortune of working with at least five people who are worth over $100 million. And I've been uh, with every single one of them, I've been shocked at how slowly they work. Like everything they do is very deliberate, it's very diligent, and they just go through their work at a very methodical, slow pace. And the reason that they can work so slow is that the projects they're working on, if they work, which they're not assured that they will, they'll have 1,000 to 10,000% return on that. That it will create an enormous difference in their life. Whereas most people are working on things in their life that are going to make, hey, I'm working on something that's going to make a one, two, if they're doing something really big, maybe it'll make a 10% difference in their life. Well, if you're working on things that are going to have such a small return, you have to do a lot of them really fast. So because of that, they can either have the fear of, I'm going to work on something that's really large and it may fail, and that's going to hurt, but I can do it slowly, or I can take the uncertainty of I'm going to work on something much smaller that has a much smaller return. But because of that, I have to do it much faster. I have to be much quicker. I have to be much more efficient. So I think there's a mindset in the life in modern society in America that really goes against that uh, slowing down. That if you slow down, you need to be your productivity doesn't go down, it actually goes up because you're focusing on the bigger picture.
Mm-hmm. And it opens vulnerability for both the guest and the audience.
Yes.
So, you have worked with high achievers who seem to have it all, yet come seeking breathwork. What is often missing behind external success?
Mm. What's missing often behind external success is a sense of fulfillment, a sense of purpose, a sense of meaning that they have been chasing financial rewards. And I see this at all levels, not just super high achievers, but doctors, lawyers, people who have achieved greatly in their fields, in that they climb the ladder of success and they get to the very top of the ladder of success and then look around and realize this was it. That it's they don't have this sense of fulfillment. They don't have this sense of achievement. There's no celebration. There's no Super Bowl trophy celebration afterwards. There's no parade. There's just more of the same. And many times they realize that the life that they've been living is out of alignment with who they are. That all of us, through well-meaning parents, school system, churches, we tell the world our dreams, and the world says, "No, how about do not do that? How about you go become an accountant? How about you become a lawyer? How about you become a dentist? How about you do something that's reasonable with your life instead of taking this big risk, or what appears to be a big risk?" And they get to the top of that and realize that, um, fulfillment comes from doing work that fills you with energy and that other people appreciate. So what they realize is they're getting paid a lot to do work that doesn't fill them with energy. That's very depleting for them. That's draining of them. And what they're looking for is, how can they take that skill set? How can they take that success? How can they reconnect with themselves and who they really are and what they really value? Because if you've spent several decades going down a path, fighting your own inner instincts, it can take a little time to reconnect with that inner self and who you really are and what your values are and what's important to you and what lights you up in life. And that through doing breath work, they can have that connection with themselves where their mind, their body, their emotions, and their spirit all connect. And then once those connect, that energy can flow through them and they can realize, hey, this is um that maybe they're not going to achieve financially as greatly, but they can still live a very abundant and very full life. And that when we say abundant, the very first thing that you need to describe is what is enough. That once you know what enough is, you don't have to keep striving for more and more and more. That you've hit the line of this is a level of income, this is a level that will satisfy my needs. Now I can focus on other areas of my life. Many people continue to work no matter how much work they have, like they're a subsistence farmer, like they can't do anything but work, because if they stop working, they'll die. That they'll starve to death because of that. And I have the belief that if you are in alignment with your gifts, if you're in alignment with your energy and your values and what you have to offer to the world, that you can actually start to decrease the amount that you're working for money so that you can increase those energy levels in other areas of your life.
Mm-hmm. 100%. And can you share a moment when breathwork allowed someone to finally release what words couldn't?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I was guiding a group breathwork session last night. And one of the beautiful things about breath work and its ability to provide things that talk therapy can't. I think talk therapy is a wonderful service that people can participate in, and I think one of the things that therapy does is that it gives people techniques and strategies to move forward in life. That it tells you, hey, this would be a more appropriate way to deal with something. Like, telling someone, "Hey, that's not appropriate. I don't appreciate it when you do that." Nobody taught me to say that when I was a kid, and I had to learn, like, oh, you can tell people things are inappropriate when they're older. Now, the thing that therapy struggles with a little bit more is giving people the capacity and the peace and the calmness so that they can use those strategies to not be triggered, to not be angered, to not be flustered when these situations come up so that they can move forward with it. So last night I was uh, guiding a group through breath work. There was about 20 of us doing breath work together. And one of the gentlemen there, he's probably been 10 or 15 times. And throughout the breathwork experience, the type of breathwork that we do is a rhythmic circular breathing pattern in which your breath never stops. And it creates a mildly transcendent state. And he was expecting to drop into this mildly transcendent state throughout his breath work. But every time he would start to drift into that place, his body would start shaking and convulsing. And that went on for about 40 minutes, that his body was shaking and convulsing. And normally when that happens for people, and that's what happened in this situation, is that our body stores trauma in it, that it's not just in our brain, it's also in our body, and that we have to process that emotions through our bodies, that it needs to be processed physically. We can't just talk about something that's emotional. We can't just talk about something that's physical. That in order to process those emotions, you have to feel those emotions, which is why people always use the phrase, the only way out is through. And that if it's stored in you physically, it needs to be processed physically. So for 40 minutes, he shook on the mat, he sweat, and then when he got done, he said it is the lightest and freest he's felt in his life. I'm looking forward to following up with him today to see how he's doing.
Mhm. That's amazing. And shame and self worth are deep blocks for many. How does conscious breath work help people move through shame into self acceptance?
That is a great question. So all of us are probably dealing with shame at some level. You know, when I first began this work, not first began this work, I was several years into this work, and I thought, oh, I'm gonna give a breathwork class on shame and self-worth. And you know, you always think you're going to be the enlightened master. And then once I started reading about it, I was like, huh, well, maybe I still have a little work here to do myself. That like negative self-talk is a part of shame, procrastination, putting things off. Um, Fear of being seen, letting other people take credit for your work without resisting it, it can be a symptom of shame. And a lot of that is it is a lack of self-worth. And one of the things that we do with breath work is we set an intention. And when we set an intention, intention is a how you want to show up. That an intention isn't a goal, it's not a dream, it's not a desire, it's a characteristic, it's a trait, it's how you need to show up as a human being so that you can be fully embodied and be fully self-actualized. So with that, we set intentions around self-worth, and you know, we express it as gratitude. I'm grateful that I'm worthy. I'm grateful that I'm the magic that the world needs to see. That we have different affirmations about ourselves that we state before breath work. And one of the things that happens with conscious connected breathing and with breath work is that the majority of the time you're breathing, it just happens on its own. You don't have to think about it at all. And when we take that breath and we move it from the unconscious to the conscious, it takes other things in our life that are unconscious and also brings them out into consciousness. So by becoming conscious of our breath and keeping our breaths connected, um, memories, situations will come up in our life. And what you're doing is you're connecting your conscious mind to your subconscious mind. And when those two connect, and then you've taken this intention that is in your conscious mind, you're handing that off to your subconscious mind, and then your subconscious mind is coming back with the material that's needed so that you can work through that. And again, you work through it at a very visceral, physical, emotional, spiritual level. Sometimes memories come up that you can remember. One of my favorites is people will go into this liminal space, which is kind of a liminal space is you're not asleep, you're not awake, you're kind of in between. And they'll know that they had memories the entire time, that situations were coming up, memories were coming up. But when it's over, they can't remember. It's almost like waking up for a dream, like where you're like, I know I had a dream, but I don't remember the content of the dream. and your conscious and your subconscious mind are connecting with one another on an intentional level so that you can work through that material so that you can live a life of worthiness.
That makes so much sense. And does facing shame feel different through the body versus the mind?
Yes. I think they are connected. That um, in the body, I think a lot of poor posture that people have is caused by shame, and that we can try and overcome that shame by just changing our posture, which does feel a bit like dealing with the symptoms. There's a tightness in your chest. You roll your shoulders in, you pull yourself down. Um, that one of the things that I did physically was earlier in my life. There's this trait called gray man, which is you can be in a crowd of people or you can be standing there by yourself and you just try and make yourself invisible. And shame is really one of the aspects of it is the fear of being seen. So when you're dealing with that shame, you don't want people to see you. You don't want to stand out. That's one aspect of it. And then the other part of it is, extreme arrogance, that people are way over the top ostentatious, and they can be just way too, um, that they can vacillate between being arrogant, being ostentatious, being outlandish, really standing out, or they try and hide from the world. Both of those can be symptoms of shame, and how they show up physically in that posture and how they present, being shy. Like there's a difference between being an introvert, which is like it takes energy for you to have social interactions, versus shame, which is you just physically don't want to interact with other people because it is a burden for you, and because you don't want to be seen.
And this makes the abstract feel very real and actionable.
Yes.
Mhm. So, you say your mission is to help people remember who they are. How do they begin that remembering, especially when life has laid so much noise over the truth?
One of the beautiful things that happens with breath work to help people remember who they are is that there's a reliable path to self-awareness, and that through that self-awareness, that when you're dealing with shame, you're dealing with healing, that you're not yet whole, that you're kind of have a limp, and that once you're done healing, then you can begin the journey to self-awareness. And once you begin the path to self-awareness, the first thing that happens is you become calm. And calm is being grounded, being centered, being present, and that um, that all leads to that sense of peace, and that peacefulness, you can now be at rest. And when you're at rest, you relax and you can expand and you can be expansive. The very next thing that happens after being calm is that you become connected. And we talked a little bit about this before. That connection is, I'm often surprised at how many people don't know what's going on in their own body. We had somebody that come to breath work a couple months ago and said, I didn't realize I had a headache until halfway through breath work. Um, and then the headache, and the reason they realized they had a headache is the headache went away. And they're like, oh, I didn't realize it was there. So many times people are disconnected from their body, and when we talk about connection, we mean connection is a contact point that energy can flow through. So if you've ever been talking to somebody and you go, "Hey, there was no connection," what you're really saying is there was no energy being exchanged back and forth. And so the first thing breathwork does is it connects you to your body. You become physically aware. The next thing that you become aware of is your mind, and then your mind connects to your body. And then both of those connect to your emotions. So now your psyche is connected to your body. And then all of those become connected to your spirit or your energy. And it is difficult for somebody to be in alignment, to be congruent, to be in harmony with themselves if all four of those systems aren't connected and communicating with each other. If your emotions are feeling one thing and your mind is thinking something else, it's going to be very difficult for you to know who you are, because you're going to ask somebody, hey, what is important to you? Well, their mind has one answer and their emotions have a different answer. So they're in conflict. That society has given them one answer, but in their heart of hearts and their soul, they feel something else. So by connecting all four of those things together over time, through that connection, through that energy being transferred to the system, now they can be aligned. Now they can be in harmony. Now they can find out, hey, what is it that's really important to me, and what isn't important. We had a guy at breathwork a week ago. He was sharing the story with me that he had been rear-ended in his car earlier that day. And he was mildly upset when he got out of the car. Got out, looked at his car. There's a couple scratches on the bumper. He was busy, needed to get to a meeting. The lady who had hit him was just completely having a meltdown. He kind of patted her on the shoulder and said, "Hey, it's okay. There's no damage. Um, you know, go about your day. This one's on me. Let's move along." And for him, that was a tremendous, like, he got in the car and his old healed self got in the car and said, "What the heck was that? Why, why did, why didn't we get that lady's name, get her number, get her insurance, call the police, like run this whole thing down?" And he realized that that old version of him wasn't really him. That the authentic version of him doesn't care about a couple scratches on his bumper. It's not that big a deal in the grand scheme of things, that it's not worth making this woman's life miserable. It's not worth going through the hassle of insurance. But the old him would have desperately thought that that was true. So it was through connecting with himself that you realize, hey, this is what's truly valuable. This is what's truly important. And I think that's one of the things that people get every time that they come to breath work. We recommend doing it weekly, that when they come to breath work, they're reminded of what's important, because our jobs, our families, the hustle and bustle of the world consistently try and divert us towards what's urgent. And very frequently, not very often, is the urgent and the important the same thing. That usually the important thing is don't cry out for attention until it's too late. So by that constant reminder of what's important, that's who we remember who we truly are.
Definitely. And is there one practice you return to personally when you feel disconnected?
For me, when I feel disconnected, I do two things. One, daily meditation practice, or my meditation practices, of just sitting still. That there's no instructions. There's never not anything to do. That I start a timer and then I sit still. And then as soon as I move, the meditation for that day is over. My mind's allowed to wander. I can think anything I want to think. The only thing I need to do is physically sit still. And that helps me reconnect. And then usually after that, if I'm disconnected or disturbed, I have a journaling practice that I go through, and journaling seems to help me immensely. That in my personal life, I tend to ruminate a little bit and think about things again and again and again. And rather than doing that, if I journal it, it seems to free my mind of the task of having to repeat thoughts to myself. So those two practices seem to help me greatly outside of breathwork itself.
That's great. And as Jake beautifully reminds us, true elegance isn't about perfection, it's about presence. When we strip away the noise, breathe into our being, and meet ourselves without judgment, that's where our highest self resides. Keep breathing and keep remembering.